What is up, everybody? Great to have you here tonight. Tuesday night, no delay stream, and we are joined by a very special guest, none other than Brian Rast, three-time WSOP bracelet winner and all-around poker badass in-boss baller. Two of those three bracelets are the 50K Players Championship. And I think that you're the only player in the history of the game, Brian, to have 6 consecutive years of $1 million or more earnings. And you're
Yes, I was made aware of that streak a couple of years ago when there was some article that came out, and it was like, who had done that? Some other player had done it in the past, and there were 4 of us, like me, Negrano, and like 2 other people who could have tied it by doing it that year. Doc Sands and maybe Philip Gruesome or someone. And basically, in the last couple of years, each one of those guys has fallen off. And I've already actually done $1 million this year. So I'm at, I don't know, whatever it is, 6 or 7, or I mean, from 2011 to 2017 now, including this year. So yeah, it's kind of cool. Although I will be frank, given how much money I'm actually putting up in buy-ins every year, if I didn't cash for $1 million, I would be losing for sure. I mean, this year there's maybe a 300K and 100K plus other. I mean, just at the World Series, I'll do 500K, and that doesn't include, the monthly ARIA 25Ks. Although, I mean, I pretty much don't play anything other than that. Like, I have not traveled for poker yet this year. I didn't even go to like California. There's been enough good action in Vegas for some of those stops. So not that I was ever big at traveling, but like, yeah, I mean, just with the monthly ARIA High Roller Series and the WSOP, and like, there's always that 100K and the Bellagio stuff in December, I'll be over $1 million. So cashing for $1 million will, it's not like that. It's not like, wow, like that amazing. Like, I forget, like the guy who actually did it and set the record at 4, whatever, but like 10 or 15 years ago, he did it at a time when, it was, you wouldn't really, no one was buying in for $1 million in buy-ins a year. So cashing for $1 million meant you like crushed it that year.
Yeah.
Right. So it was totally different.
Like, I remember when I was just getting into poker around the 2002, 2003, there might be, 7 or 8 10Ks a year that you'd be playing. And now it seems like, 2 or 3 times a month there's, even more often, right? You got, like, how many high rollers do they actually have at ARIA every month? Looks like sometimes they have 2 a week.
Usually there's probably an average of like 3 a month. It's hard to say because like sometimes there's 2, sometimes there's 3, sometimes it's 25, 25, 50. Sometimes, I don't make every single one of those also, but yeah, I mean, there's like a decent steady, and they're rebuys. So, each, like for each 25, I probably average like 2 buy-ins, because I mean, you can rebuy for 9 levels, which is, even though, they're 1-day tournaments, but 9 levels is pretty deep. I mean, you buy in, there's a couple levels of like 100 big blind poker, but by the time, that's, that last level of the rebuy, you're down to like 25 big blinds. So, I mean, it's not that hard. I've been into a tournament with those for like 3 or 4 buy-ins before. It's not like, it's not like that crazy. It's not like you need to be going nuts. It's like you could just have pretty standard flips go against you for like 30 big blinds or something, and you rebuy, and there you are. Like, if you get kind of unlucky in the way the cards run out, like right there when you're right before the end of the rebuy period.
Right. So when I look through your Hendon mob, kind of leading up to having you here on the show, I mean, it seems that you've just been crushing these high rollers. Just this year you took down one, had a 4th in another. And like you've got 20 million in tournament winnings. Most of that does seem to be coming from the those huge nosebleed events, the 500K over at the ARIA that you took down a few years ago. Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah, 2015.
The 50Ks, the 100K, over at Bellagio, and these 25Ks, and from what I can tell, it looks like you know, mostly that's what you're just completely crushing, and it kind of besides your first bracelet, which was a 1500 p pot limit hold'em back in 2011. I'm kind of curious. Is that mainly just because you don't play the smaller events, or do you think that there's actually something that that is different from playing a higher caliber player in a high roller than there is in playing just a massive field with, say, 1,500 people or 2,000 people in like a $1,500 buy-in?
Yeah, I mean, there's, in terms of just like how it looks, like I was saying, there's just like a lot of buy-ins. So the fact that I'm just willing to basically do unlimited buy-ins in most of the tournaments. I mean, sometimes if I don't feel like it and I'm in a buy-in or two, I might like go walk around the Aria for a bit, go eat something, go watch a basketball game, go play someone Pineapple or whatever, and just like wait an hour or two to like the end of the rebuy period to just so I'm only in 3 buy-ins today, right? Like if the day hasn't been going well and I'm not, at the level of motivation where I'm keep firing. I don't care today. So sometimes some of those tournaments where, I'm a little more likely to cash than what you would expect in just a single buy-in tournament, right? Because like I'm rebuying, and not every player in those is or whatever. So also in a lot of high rollers, it's not 10% of the field that cashes; it's a little higher. So it's like how the stats look are maybe it looks like I've done well. I'm not trying to somehow say like I haven't, but I think sometimes when you look at someone's Hendon Mob page, it can look like they've done probably better than they did. Like it might look like, wow, like, a year where I would cash for like 2 million, like, wow, like I must be up like 1.5 million that year when, and forget about like pieces or anything like that, just in like gross tournament winnings when like there's no way, like I definitely am in over 1 million in buy-ins every year.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So it's like, so that's part of it. And second thing, it is true that outside of the WSOP, I basically don't even play 10Ks really anymore. And I just don't travel that much. I play this high roller series here in Vegas. I started another kind of high roller 8-game tournament series. Once in a while I go to California for a couple of those WPTs, but it's like probably my chances every year of going to those are under 50%. And this maybe the 10K at the Bellagio in December or something, but I don't even play the Bellagio Cup 10K after the WSOP because I'm usually playing cash.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I just don't play that many small tournaments, and most small tournaments, well, small for the stakes that I'm playing, rather. I mean, most people probably wouldn't call it small, like a 10K or a 5K. Like when I do play them, they're normally like massive field. Like I don't even want to play one unless it's like 500 plus runners usually, like outside of the WSOP. So my odds of like winning those are low. So I mean, if you look at my career, I think I've won one tournament that had 500 or more players, which was, I think, my first bracelet. I mean, I think that tournament had, probably 800 players or something like that.
Yeah.
So, it makes it a lot easier to get kind of like final table or, top 5, like podium style results when, I'm like most of these tournaments that are on there are realistically like 20 to 40 runners. Right. So
no, it makes a lot of sense. At the same time, when I go through those stats, I mean, you have so many more first places than seconds or thirds, and most of these times you're up against just other in bosses. It's so definitely don't take anything.
The first thing I've run very good in that.
Yeah.
I basically have never gotten a second in a tournament where I didn't chop. Every single time I've played it out, basically I've won in just any kind of like live tournament setting, which has been, I'm going to knock on wood because there's a pretty big difference between first and second. So, I'm not trying to jinx anything. Let's just keep that going. I'm not saying I deserve that. I'm also not saying maybe I didn't have the best of it. I'm just saying that's running good, and I want to keep it that way.
It is running good, but it's also pretty clutch. So let's just for people who might not know the history of Brian Rast. You were born, and for the first part of your life you were in Denver until I think you were about 9 when you moved out to California.
Yep, correct.
What was your family like? What was the family situation in the Rast house?
My dad traveled a decent amount, and my mom didn't work. Kind of like I had one sister who was 2.5 years younger than me, and my mom kind of like took care of us. So just we were always involved in a decent amount of stuff, and my mom would just make sure that our lives went really smoothly, make sure that the house went well. My mom was involved in a lot of like church things and everything, and just made sure that we always ate and this. And I mean, I'd say probably as far as kids went, we were pretty easy. I mean, we were both pretty self-motivated and both like did well in school. And so my mom, in terms of like having to, get us or to do stuff like that, my mom probably, had a pretty easy load, but I mean, she made up for it by, we were involved in a bunch of things. Like, I played multiple sports, but, not very well, and rec leagues. And I was in stuff, after school things, which wasn't really my mom, but when I was younger, I was, took piano lessons at one time, violin lessons at one time, was just always kind of involved in stuff, which, I took like tennis camp for a week or two every summer, like swimming, so it was cool, and it's something that I can appreciate now, because I feel like I kind of like know how to do a lot of things, and obviously have my parents, or my mom specifically, for that to thank, for like her busyness. Like you always have people who are like, oh, like I don't really know how to swim or this, and it's like no, I'm not saying I'm like great at any of these things. Right? Like I did it when I was a kid, but you learn how to do something as a kid, and I still know how to do it. Like I can go to a tennis court and play, even though I'm not good. Like I can ski, even though I'm decent. I'm not like going out there crushing. But
do you you still play music at all? Did you keep up with a violin or keyboard or any of that?
No, playing music was never anything that I liked. Like I just viewed, I never practiced over the week. You get like stuff to practice. I just like kind of blew that off, and I just go every week to the lessons. But I do credit that, as to upping my overall ability to appreciate music.
What was
I can't really play anymore, but I feel like I appreciate a really wide range of music, and I have a good sense of the beat and everything, and so I think that's part of it.
What was your first video game console?
The Atari.
Oh, no kidding. Taking it back.
Yeah, man. I was into video games from a wee age. In fact, I'm not really a video game player almost at all anymore. But for, as a kid, I did not like watching TV. I liked playing video games. So I watched very little TV, and I played, Atari, then the Nintendo, then the Super Nintendo. I was a Nintendo guy. Nintendo versus Sega, I was Nintendo.
Yeah. So let's fast forward a little bit. You go to California. You spend your teenage years there, valedictorian of your high school class.
Yes, sir.
You get into Stanford. Did you actually declare a major in Stanford? Were you actually or?
I did. During my third year, I declared math.
So,
which was probably a mistake, given that I was basically at the end of that year, I kind of like found poker, and after that, I just didn't give a shit anymore, because I pretty much knew I was like going to do poker. So getting a degree was just kind of to like close out that chapter, finish something I had started, but I knew I wanted to do poker, and I think had I chosen. I kind of picked math earlier that year because I was always good at math, and it seemed like something that I could major in, I could apply to, like, without picking a career because I didn't know what I wanted to do, it's something that I could apply to like a lot of different careers, right? Like, oh, I'm a math major and now I could learn how to do this. So it was, but it wasn't because, I like math, but it wasn't because like I loved math and I just like was like could sit around and do math all the time. And there wasn't like some kind of innate passion there. It was a very practical decision. But once the practicality of the decision like went away, it ended up being a bad one. And had I picked something that I liked more, like, the thing that always comes to mind was like, maybe if I had picked philosophy, maybe I would have like been able to kind of grind it out. Because I ended up actually staying around Stanford long enough to graduate. But, I did very poorly. My last quarter, I failed every class I took and was on academic probation for the second time, at which point I kind of told my dad, I just think I'm moving on right now. But, maybe if I had done philosophy and I was kind of able to, it's a little different too, like math classes. It's like, you got to turn in homework every week, and regular tests. You kind of had to like go and keep up with it.
Yeah, no doubt. It's definitely it's not a breezy major. It's not something that you can skip classes and play poker all night and then just show up for a final at the end and
or like write a paper on your own in like the 48 hours before it's due and like turn it in and like get a C and sort of like just barely pass, which was kind of like what I was trying to do. I think I'm a pretty smart guy, but I'll tell you what, trying to do that in like upper level math classes, I just was not smart enough to get that done. Between like not turning in homework assignments, there were even times I missed midterms and whatever, and trying to cram it all and learn it all myself, like already having an F and going into like the finals. I just, by the end, I just wasn't really getting it done in some of those upper division math classes. So, which, it's worked out, so it is what it is. But it would have actually kind of been nice in retrospect, I think, to have given that it's like if I had dropped out my second or third year, okay, whatever. It's like I gained that. But, I ended up being at Stanford for 4 years and a quarter, now out of those 4 years and a quarter, because like normally people go for 3 quarters out of the year, right?
Yeah.
Like, 1 quarter I was stopped out, so I was there, but I didn't take classes. And then 2 other quarters, I failed a bunch of classes and was on academic probation. So, but I was like physically there long enough to reasonably graduate, and I didn't do it. So it's kind of a waste. Also, just in retrospect, my time at Stanford was probably the time in my life when I was the least motivated by a passion for learning. I was kind of like that in high school, and I've been like that in the last, I would say, 8 or 9 years. But I went through a phase at that point in my life where I just kind of didn't care. I was a little bit over learning, just learning for the sake of it.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, I'm like, wow, this was kind of a cool opportunity for me to be in one of the premier academic environments in the world and like learn from people who are oftentimes on the cutting edge of their field, like be around other people who are really smart and interested in stuff like this too. And I could have, used that better than I did at the time, because at the time I definitely didn't.
So this was around 2003, I think, right, when you kind of got into poker and started thinking that this was going to be your career. When you made the decision to leave Stanford and actually start devoting yourself full time as a professional poker player, what was that conversation like with mom and dad?
It's not like the fact that I was playing poker was a surprise, at this point I had been doing it since kind of like the summer after my third year. I went home, had a part-time job that I got through a temp agency, made some money at that, was concurrently playing and teaching myself poker, quit that job like 5 weeks in, played poker for the rest of the summer. I won $20K that summer. I was at home. I was open with my parents, went back to school, had been playing during the year. That next summer, I like went to Europe. That was during the Athens Olympics. I traveled around Europe on my own dime for 2 months, like played some poker while I was there to like make money too online. And, I bought my first car. I was now paying for my food instead of my parents at school. So, I was open with my parent about my plans with poker and how it was going financially and this and that, I wasn't just gambling. Like I was, doing measured risk taking and, managing my money. And, I had kind of a little bit of a plan for this. And, so, by the time that, the ball actually dropped, it's not like it was this big surprise. I'd already, every month or two, I'd have these discussions with my dad where he would kind of, well, like any reasonable person would, try to talk me into like being more serious about school.
Mm-hmm.
And, you've worked so hard to kind of get where you are. You have this opportunity. By all means, play poker. I get it. But, why don't you just get this degree? Which, it's like obviously the rational thing to say to anyone, right? That even when he's telling me it, I'm like, yeah. But, I'm just the kind of person who, when I'm motivated to do something and I'm passionate about it, I'm an animal. I'm a total beast. Like I can go do it and put myself into it and not think twice about the commitment or whatever. And that's been part of why I think with many things I've been really successful in my life. But, the kind of flip side to that is that, I'm not like, I think everyone knows people when you were in school. Maybe it was you, maybe it was other people you knew who didn't really like what they were doing. They didn't know why they were doing it. They were like, oh, my parents are just making me do it. But they still did like pretty well, and just was not one of those people. I mean, if I knew why I was doing it and I was interested and I was passionate about it, full speed ahead, I'd probably crush it. But like once it was like, well, I'm going to do poker, so why am I majoring in math? It's like just all the wheels started falling off the wagon, right? Like, okay, well then why am I going to go to class? So just stay up all night playing poker, sleep in the next day, hang out with people in the afternoon. All of a sudden, you do that a whole week and you just like miss class for a week. Then all of a sudden you're behind and you're just like, fuck it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what do you think, have you ever thought about maybe going back and actually finishing up a degree somewhere? I mean, you're still relatively young.
Crossed my mind, like yes, but no. I mean, now at this point, like I have a family. We're just bought a house in Vegas that we're remodeling, and plans to have a couple more babies and like post up here. And it's just, if I really wanted to learn something academic, right? I mean, I could take like online classes now, even from like a premier university. Like if I didn't research it on my own. I mean, I actually, subscribe to a bunch of like pretty in-depth, like science-based YouTube channels. Like there's this PBS Space Time, which talks about cosmological topics.
I'm familiar with that one. I was watching that, a little bit this week as well.
Yeah, they're like pretty in-depth. And if I wanted to get even more in-depth, I could just try to sign up for a class online or something.
That's the one with the Australian guy, right? Who,
yes. Yeah, he's new. There used to be a different guy, but he, the newer guy for the last year or whatever is Australian.
Okay, so
yeah, like Kurz's got whatever in a nutshell. That one that has a bunch of good videos. So I mean, I buy books. Like I learn about a lot of stuff. I mean, what would be the point? Like, get a degree to make money? I mean,
I don't know. I was just kind of curious. I'm with you on this one, actually. I mean, it seems to me like the whole university system, in my opinion, is a little bit of a hustle.
Yeah.
And it really seems to me like going to a university like Stanford is much more about the connections you make rather than the actual piece of paper that they give you at the end.
But no, I mean, the thought had passed my mind in years, but never seriously. Yeah. It was never anything I like seriously have entertained. And at this point in my life, it's pretty much. But
at the same time, if somebody in their third year at Stanford is emailing you and say, I'm a big admirer of you, Brian. I'm thinking about doing the same thing, and would your advice to me be to drop out of school and play poker for a living? I mean, if I get those emails sometimes, and I was like, no, finish school. I mean, it's like you said, that's the rational thing to say, even though maybe for you, it wouldn't have been the right move. But probably when you look back on it, I mean, your career trajectory probably wouldn't have changed that much. If I understand it right, I mean, you started playing cash, tons of cash up there in Lucky Chances and the Bay Area, probably hitting up Bay 101 from time to time, I'd think. And then, like, take us back to that. So from about 2003 to really until your first bracelet, where you broke out into the scene in 2011 with two huge scores that summer. You were relatively unknown, from outside observers looking into the whole poker world, and really, the pros, of course, knew who you were because you were playing all the big cash games. But what was it like going from, say, 2003, 2004 up to 2011? I mean, was it just like, just gravy train the whole way? I mean, like, or were there some points where you were really struggling and thinking, like, man, is this the right move for me? I mean, how often were you at a point in your career where you started doubting yourself, your own abilities, and whether you were on the right track?
Yeah, no, it's a big question to answer. I'm going to try here. So a succinct thing to say is there was never really a time during that in which I doubted myself. I would say when I first was dropping out of school, my expectations for how I would do were a lot smaller, just to be frank. I mean, I kind of thought I was dropping out for what today, considering how well I've done, were like extremely modest, like expectations. Just like I kind of thought actually I was probably leaving money on the table. Whereas in retrospect, the way things have worked out, I probably made more money this way. But at the time, I thought I was kind of doing it so I could control my own life and have freedom and just do something that I liked. And, I could make like a certain amount of money that by the standards of my career were extremely modest, but then, I would be happy with that. And then kind of just, during the first number of years from whenever I dropped out, 2003, until, I don't know, maybe 2007 or no, I didn't drop out in 2003. See, 2003 is when I started playing, but I dropped out in like the end of 2004, or like beginning of 2005, I think. And I believe, for the next couple years, I was playing like pretty decent stakes. Like I already had a bankroll of over 100,000. So, by the time I had dropped out, but basically for the rest of my career, although decently after it wouldn't have mattered. I mean, I never really came close to going broke, like in terms of just like a real, like raw amount of money standpoint. I mean, I never kind of like went down below 100,000 again. I mean, there was kind of always a point earlier in my career, at least, where I would, if I, those first couple of years after I dropped out, there were a number of times I kind of like went between 1 and 3 or 400K, kind of like in that range. Right. And as I'd move up, I'd like play more 25-50 or even like 50-100, right? And those games were decently tougher because like those were kind of like the biggest games online back then, and like some of the bigger live games. And my results were, I mean, not only is that not really like a big bankroll for those games anyway, right? But my results were a lot like streakier, and frankly, in a lot of big spots live, I know because there was one point way back then when I blogged about it where I thought I just ran really bad in some big, like, 40K, 30, 40, 50K pots where I kind of like had the best of it and ran bad. But I mean, every time I would get lower during that, I would drop down and like play 5-10 or 10-20 live. And like those games, I was just crushing. Like I basically like couldn't lose in those games. I was just a lot better than most of the people I was playing with, and I kind of knew that. So, I mean, I was never really worried about it. And, I've always been the kind of person who, I mean, I can put my ego aside a little bit. And actually my ability to do that and divorce myself a bit from my ego has come in very much in handy, because I think it's one of the things that's allowed me to continue evolving. Like I never think I've just like made it. I feel like throughout my career, I've consistently worked, and for a very long time back then, like there were always people who were better than me, and I thought that they were better than me. And, I just tried to learn and get better. And, I was willing to
Do you
accept that, and I wouldn't get hurt too bad.
do you still feel that way? I mean, do you still look around at these ARIA high rollers of the series and think that there's people who are better than you at the
You
game?
know, I am more of a generalist than a specialist anymore. I mean, I think that if you take like all poker games and played in a cash or tournament format, so I'm talking about like every limit game and like every game played in like big bet format. I mean, I just don't think there could really be many people in the world who are better than me as an overall generalist. I mean, I play pretty much everything at all the biggest stakes. Like they're like, how many guys are like actually playing like nosebleed, no limit tournaments where, like with solvers and stuff, everyone's gotten really good at no limit hold'em recently. And like, doing well, like actually winning in like goals in the tough fields. Plus, I mean, my like bread and butter game throughout my career has been like deep stack, no limit cash. I mean, that's just like been what I've played. That's what I went to Macau to play. I mean, that's like, probably my best game. So that's part of the reason why crossing over to tournaments like went so well and smoothly for me, because, you're still playing no limit hold'em at the end of the day. So you understand the game, you learn some new things, you learn about ICM, right? And then, I'm not that good of a PLO player anymore, really, but there was a time like 8 or 9 years ago when that was probably my best game, and I was playing that the most for a while online, and playing like the Rail Heaven half and half and everything. So relative to the guys who are the best PLO players now, I'm like decently worse than them, and like the army of like those guys that can play high stakes online or whatever. But given that I had played it a lot in the past and I have a lot of experience in like most setting, so there might be a number of specialists at PLO who are better than me, but like every single one of those guys probably isn't better at like no limit hold'em or other games, right? And it's kind of like you can kind of say similar stuff about that about like a lot of games, like go through horse or other limit games or whatever, and there's going to be a number of specialists who are definitely better than me.
Sure.
But I think if you just like start adding up all the games, and now like how about not only playing them in cash game formats, but in a tournament format like the 50K, when you're taking in how does ICM affect like every game and this and whatever. I mean, I think looking around as a poker generalist, I just don't really think there are. And I don't think I'm being egotistical with that. I feel like it's true. I mean, even stuff like one of the games I play now that I've done well in is like the big bet mix, which is like 800K min buy-in, like with 8 big bet games, like no limit, right? So it's like I have a lot of experience in just about every form of poker, and I've been testing it against good players at big stakes across all the formats, and there really aren't that many people in the poker world who are doing it. Now there are some, and you could like some guys like Ivy and Seaver and like maybe online like Ike Haxton or like Michael Thuritz and some other guys like that. But a lot of the guys, you can make an argument like if you're going to compare like Phil Ivey hasn't really been playing no limit hold'em high roller tournaments for like 2 years now. Would he come in and really be like big time plus EV against like these guys nowadays? Like, I don't know. Who knows? It's like an interesting question. But yeah, so, can I look around and in any particular poker format see people that are better than me? Sure. I mean, I'm not an idiot. Like, I know there are guys like a limit deuce to 7 triple draw specialists, like the German kids who have like fucking probably figured the game out. Like, I'm not going to be playing any of them heads up, but like, let's get an 8-game tournament with them going. Sure. You got me in triple draw. I'll take the other 7 games. Sure. Or like, I'll play, probably my best game in that sense is probably no limit hold'em. Cause in a deep stack, no limit live cash game, I don't really think there are many people who are better than me. I'll just take myself, especially if it's a situation where not only do you want to kind of think about how to play GTO against other pros, but you also need to think about how to exploit weaker players who make a lot of mistakes. Because I have a lot of experience in that. Yeah. Right. Like I've been playing deep stack, no limit cash against weaker players, where one of my main goals has been like how to exploit them for the max for a long time. And part of the reason why I'm doing well in no limit high rollers is I put some time in, learning some things on like PO solver and how to play GTO a little bit better. So, in that particular situation, I'll probably can look around and say maybe not too many people I would take myself against. But yeah, I in any one limit, or any one game or situation, sure, I could look around and say some to a lot of people are better than me.
So you've mentioned PO Solver now twice. What besides that, like what other tools do you use to improve your own game right now? Like what does your training regimen look like?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the training that I do ends up being kind of like with people. Just easiest to like talk with people, or I have a friend talk some through some situations in PO Solver, or things that he's done, or talk through a hand. I mean, I've spent a little time doing like hands on my own in PO Solver to try to see some of the things it says about how to play my range. One of the biggest ways that I train too is I started like a year and a half ago when I first got my Poker Stars count up. I started playing. I never played sit and goes, but I just started playing hypers. And I was played for a little bit. I played like a decent amount of like the six max hyper sit and goes.
Yeah.
And I would, after a session, I just like put in a bunch of the spots into like what's Hold'em resources, which would just kind of basically spit out the GTO way that spot should be played for push shove. And just kind of like seeing how, as you go in the sit and go and you're down, like there can be pretty extreme ICM situations, especially when there's 3 people left.
Sure.
And I mean, that actually has helped me a lot with ICM and like how to play at the end of high roller tournaments where situations can kind of be similar to that a lot.
Have you used ICMizer or Max Silver's app?
Yeah, I've used ICMizer as well. ICMizer is much easier when you want to customize a spot for like a customized range or situation. Whereas I think Hold'em resources is better for most sit and go spots because, in hyper sit and goes, oftentimes, you get down and it's kind of like mostly push fold, not like raise, re-raise, shove, right? So for just like push fold, you can really quickly put in spots in Hold'em resources, which, it's much simpler. But if you just kind of want to see like how extreme ICM is affecting stacks for, like, okay, 3 people left in the sit and go, the payout's 35, 65 or whatever, 40, whatever it is, 46, I don't even remember. And, and like the stack sizes are ABC. Okay. Like, it gives you a good idea. So now, I mean, I feel like towards the end of tournaments now, I have like a really, good idea about how extreme the ICM effects are, and what that means I should do about it. And now there's a lot of times where I didn't used to do this in the past, but at certain stages, if the blinds get big enough, like, I'll start shoving. Yeah. Like if I think there's like a decent amount of ICM effects, especially if I'm one of the bigger stacks or like the biggest stack, and it's like folded to me in the cutoff and the 3 guys behind me have like 20 big blinds or less, decent ICM effects, like now I'm just like ripping sometimes. Whereas like before I wasn't really doing that as much because I wasn't just as familiar with how ICM works. Okay. And especially in like high roller tournaments, I think where a lot of the other pros are like pretty aware of that, ranging from like pretty decent to really good, I mean, that matters. In fact, one of the things you have to be careful with ICM is if you make a play that might be correct from like a GTO ICM perspective, but you're playing on somebody who's totally unaware and just not going to factor in ICM and like call you much lighter, then obviously, the play's not good for you because you're now, you're not getting someone to fold hands that like maybe they should fold under ICM.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
So I have a few questions from the chat. First from RT Kabuto, asking some people regret one particular hand in their career, either not calling or making a bluff. Do you have one of these kind of hands that just haunt you?
No, I do not. In general, I'm very good about being able to kind of move on. And I definitely don't have a hand at this point that, at this point I feel that way. I mean, I don't want to say that there haven't been throughout my career any times where I regretted a hand for a little while, or the way I played it, or it bugged me. But
Mm-hmm.
it's probably true that the half life on that was, 10 years ago was decently longer than the half life now.
Sure.
Now oftentimes I don't care that much, like maybe 1 or 2 days later, even for like a hand where I lost like a pretty large amount of money. But yeah, no, I mean, nothing that's like, wow, well, I really wish I did that differently.
I wish I could say the same thing. I definitely, can look back at one or two hands that I feel like, wow, that was kind of a career-defining hand that I really messed up. Bony Fish in the chat asks, "Are you selling any WSOP action this year? I know that you're affiliated with Stake Kings. Do you have any packages for the WSOP that interested fans could maybe pick up a little sweat piece?"
I did. I actually posted 3 packages on there. So I think the guy that owned the site or something contacted me and was like, "Hey, you want to put anything up?" And I did. I put something a little bit up for the Super High Roller Bowl, the 111K one drop, and the 50K. So
Okay.
I think it's kind of fun for those to have some people take pieces, and I can charge markup. So there it is. They're on there.
I definitely feel like these kind of crowdfunding staking platforms have the potential to really change the game of poker, make it definitely more interesting to watch from a fan perspective. It's very cool to be able to actually have a sweat in some of these tournaments. Another question by RT Kabuto. What's your morning ritual before going to a tourney? He says some people do the exact same ritual to prep. Is there anything that you do specifically every single time you go play that you feel gives you a little bit of an edge?
Um, I definitely have not had any kind of consistent morning ritual over the course of my career. I mean, I would say that this year in general, I'd say I'm on the healthier side when it comes to things, especially maybe with poker players, although I'm by no means the healthiest guy out there. And, this year I've started messing around with some like 10-minute meditation in the morning and some stuff like that, that I think has a positive effect on, my mental processing for the day. I also, for quite a long time now, I mean, I'm kind of into stuff like brain training. So it's not necessarily something I do on a day I'm going to play poker, but that I do in general, especially like, during a time like the WSOP when I'm playing like monster hours every day for 2 months. I don't do any of that because I'm getting enough mental stimulation and fatigue just with playing. But during like the rest of the year, if there's, a week where I'm not playing that much, I'm like doing, real life errands or family time stuff, then I might, there's just been like various things that I've taken up for brain training, and I will, rotate them rotate in something new. Cause the goal isn't to get like really, really good at the thing.
Right.
The goal is to like increase your neuroplasticity and be like learning new things and whatever. So, I've done like a website on luminosity. I've, done like chess tactics or like, chess games. I've gone back to luminosity. I just started doing this like combat brain training thing with this guy on Skype. Named John, that's the website. And it's like, we do a thing on Skype with some arrows, and I don't know. So, I mean, there are a lot of things that I kind of do in my life that the idea is to keep me mentally sharp and prepared. And I think that's important. But in terms of like a pregame routine or ritual, yeah. Another thing with that I've done for over a year now, actually, has it been 2? Maybe it's been 2 years now, has been, I met Elliot Rowe at one of the WSOP School of Poker seminars, and I started working with him, with Elliot. And, he does like a hypnotherapy thing where basically like the first 30 minutes of the session, like we talk and just kind of talk about, what's like going on in my life, like what's been going on in poker, different things, like kind of what am I looking for? And he like guides it to ask questions and kind of like gets into maybe like what you want to get out of the next part. And then, then you do like a 20-30 minute like hypnotherapy thing where you're just like, hypnosis is not something where he's like, telling me and I'm doing stuff I don't want to do, like against my conscious will. It's more just, you get in a really relaxed state with your eyes closed and talk through a couple things when you're there, maybe asking a couple questions to get at it a little deeper. And the idea being that those are things that will be subconsciously there that you'll remember later while you're performing something. And I think it's helped me.
So Elliot Rowe, in case anybody who's watching, that's pokermindcoach.com.
Yeah, like one of my biggest issues was focus. That's why I kind of started working with him. Is at the time I felt like I would go play live sessions and be really unfocused, whether it was like watching basketball games or like on my phone or whatever. And I mean, one of my main games especially was like playing mix, which 2 years ago I was decently worse than I am now, especially at limit games. And I really needed to be paying close attention and remembering the stud up cards and simple things like that. And I would just not be doing like really, really basic focus things.
Have you experimented at all with any sort of nootropics, like beta blockers or Adderall, green tea, theanine, coffee, anything like that?
Yeah, some of that stuff. Oh no, San Antonio just won. Damn. All right. Anyway, so damn, it was in overtime too. All right, so it's on days that I'm playing, I'm a big favorite to. On most days I have a little bit of coffee and MCT oil or something like that with like MCT oil, a little cinnamon. I take like daily. What do I take? Like coenzyme Q10, ginkgo, vitamin D. ALA, alpha lipoic acid, like a fish oil omega-3 thing, maybe like a probiotic, and maybe like one other thing that I'm forgetting. And like I take probably a methylcobalamin vitamin B pill like once or twice a week.
So pretty big stack.
Yeah, and then some of the other things you were saying I don't, but a little bit of coffee here and there. I try not to drink that much. I generally don't drink coffee other than maybe like a little bit in the morning on days I don't play. I try not to have coffee late. I think it's helped me go to sleep. I think when I'm drinking coffee like basically past the beginning of my day, it ends up making me more of an insomniac, and I don't like that. I like being able to fall asleep.
I feel like that's pretty important when you're making day 2s and day 3s to actually be able to fall asleep. I don't think we have you for too much longer, so I do have just maybe 2 more questions, and then I know that you have dinner plans with your wife. Going back to 2011, when you really broke out into the tournament scene and just really came on strong. It seems to be like there were maybe 2 things that were a little bit different at that point in your life. One of them was that you had been focusing a lot more on fitness and diet with Dave Swanson, All-American Dave, right? Who does the food at the series. And the other thing was you got engaged. What do you think? Like, how important would you say diet and fitness are to your game, and how much has actually being in charge of providing for a family and having a steady, serious relationship and a child, how has that actually affected how you play? And I mean, do you feel like that has helped your game, or has it maybe taken away a little bit of that that gambling seeking, risk seeking kind of behavior that maybe I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you attribute one or the other or both to your huge breakout year in 2011?
Yeah, I mean, I think Um, so a good question. So I'd say like with fitness, I think fitness and diet are very important up into a point. I mean, I think like if you take pretty good care of yourself, exercise at least a couple times a week, and eat generally pretty healthy, you're doing most of what you should be doing in terms of nutrition, right? You're eating the right things. You're making sure you're getting enough of the right, if you're not getting enough sun, take vitamin D, whatever, I think like if you're in pretty good shape, right? Then in terms like some of the biggest things is, being in good fitness wise, like is good for your stimulation, your memory, your mental performance, and it's really good for your stamina, which is quite important for poker. So, and I think as long as you're, in pretty good shape, it's like a lot of things in life, obviously if you keep going more and more, you'll probably get more out of it. But I would guess from the way I feel from being kind of in different stages of fitness in my life, that as long as I'm doing an okay job and I'm like in pretty good shape in terms of like what it means for my poker playing, I'm getting a lot out of it. Not everything, I'm probably even better if I do even more. But the difference between, working out every day and stuff, I mean, that's like becomes like a very big time commitment, and not just the time to do it, but kind of like the organizing it and making it part of your life, right? It makes it hard to play, a 15-hour poker session and then like work out either that day or like the next day, right? Mm-hmm. So at some point, there's compromises that get made. And I would say with the fitness part, just as long as you're kind of doing something, you're pretty consistent about it, you're probably getting most of what you could theoretically be getting out of that. The difference from being like a 75 in fitness and like a 95 in fitness is not going to make like the difference between, like a 75 and what that means to your mental performance in poker playing to like a 95. Mm-hmm. It probably is the difference between like an 80, 85 and like a 90, 95. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I would say about fitness. And then as far as like meeting my wife and getting a family, I definitely think that helped. I think that just like that moment in my life was a time when I really had kind of a personal transformation, sort of in like what my values were, like what I was doing, how I was taking care of myself. I think that prior to that, I had gone through a period a couple years before that where I was maybe a little bit better with some of those things, slightly more responsible, and a little more committed to poker. And then like before I met my wife for about a year or two, it was when I started becoming really good friends with Antonio. We started going out and drinking a lot. I stopped really spending a lot of time or caring about poker as much. And I just had a number of things all kind of like went rough. Like Victory Poker happened then. I lost quite a bit of money in that. I bought my place at Panorama. I went on a downswing in poker in large part to, I actually kind of stopped playing Nosebleed Online because I realized I wasn't like working hard enough and the swings were big. But I still was playing, some decent online stakes, and I was playing, live, and I wasn't doing very well. I just wasn't taking poker very seriously, and I didn't really care that much. And that was actually that kind of 1 to 2 years right there was kind of like my biggest downswing. And it like started from, a lot of it was like just going out, like drinking, partying and whatever. And I kind of met, I started working out with Dave. I like kind of like met my wife and started dating her, and just, it's like a lot of things in that of like me taking care of myself, like started happening then. Like I started physically taking care of myself. I got in better shape. I started caring more about like what, having money meant, because now I had other responsibilities. Like it wasn't just, me, it was now me and like helping out my future wife and her, her son at the time, who, would later become mine, and all that. So, I mean, it was just like a big mindset change. And so even though before that there, I had done really well and then gone on a big downswing, and I was in a much worse spot, maybe financially, at that point, I mentally had put myself in a much better spot in order to kind of like rebound from that and perform. And I've kind of feel like I've more or less been able to maintain that like good mindset of like taking care of myself, and I'm going to take care of myself physically and mentally in order to compete at the poker table, and try to like make good decisions about like what I'm doing at the poker table, how much I'm going to lose tonight and whatever and everything, and not like get frustrated, not go do something stupid or whatever, and drinking less and just all of that. And that just like carried over. So it's, a lot of it happened around then. A lot of it was because of my wife and our family. And yeah, I mean, a lot of it was important. And I think I credit a lot of my success really to like that mindset, because I mean, like a lot of things in life, I mean, there are a lot of talented, intelligent people that play poker, but you also kind of have to have the discipline. Might be like the most important thing to, manage yourself, continue learning, continue growing, manage your ego, try to play in the right games, quit or do something if things aren't going well. And I think that helped me with, all that helped me with that a lot.
So I think that's pretty much all I've got time for you. Have you been getting into any of this Bitcoin stuff, cryptocurrency?
Yeah, it's actually interesting that I just made my first Bitcoin purchase on I got a Trezor. I'm not on it yet.
There we go.
So I finally, after ignoring a couple friends that I wish I didn't for a little while, even as much long as like a couple years ago, maybe, it finally just kind of clicked that, this is a good idea. And, while I think there are some kind of reasonable counter arguments, like one specific one that I think is quite good, which would maybe lead you to not invest in cryptos, but like diversify, would be that, oftentimes there's not anything that's necessarily really special about one of them, right? Like maybe Bitcoin is, the most expensive one right now because it's the one that's being used the most, which makes sense.
Yeah.
But there's not anything that special about Bitcoin that, 4 years from now, there's not another one with
it's
like
actually
extra stuff that's being used
It's
more.
funny that you say that specifically, because when I have this conversation with my fiance Michelle and try to explain to her why Bitcoin is a better buy than Dogecoin, it's very hard for me to come up with a good argument why Dogecoin is not as good. And it's funny because she got into Dogecoin a few months ago, and now that's actually gone up 5 times, whereas Bitcoin's only gone up like 30% or something in that same period. Do you own any other altcoins? Ethereum, Litecoin, Golem, anything like that?
Yeah, no, I mean, the issue right now is I literally just got in. I literally made this first purchase from somebody, and I'm not on an exchange. So I've kind of realized the easiest way to like get into other coins, is going to be to get on an exchange, which I just started looking today, like an hour before this call or something. Yeah, like what exchange do I want to get into? I asked a couple people. I mean, what exchange are you on? Why do you like it?
Well, for me, I would say like Poloniex is kind of the big one with all the liquidity. Coinbase has one called GDAX.com, which is pretty good for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin. As far as actually trading back into fiat currencies, I go with Kraken, just because Coinbase actually kicked me off because they didn't like the fact that I was a professional poker player. So that was kind of irritating. But Poloniex, I think, is the big one. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but
yeah, no, someone else recommended that one. So I mean, yeah, kind of in order to get into the other coins, I would need to do that. I'm just getting my feet wet, but it strikes me that, first it's just like obviously it's like an amazing way to like do transactions with people, right? Especially if you're traveling and other things. And so just from like a utility standpoint, it's like, I kind of want to have some money so I can like easily transact, or like, oh, here, this, I don't necessarily need IOUs.
And this is kind of a big deal when you're traveling to, say, Macau. We're traveling to Europe for like the WSOP Europe, right? I mean, like, actually getting money into these casinos in other countries is kind of a tough logistical problem to have. At least it is in my experience. And I don't think I do near as much traveling as I would expect you do. Before you go, one more thing. I want to talk a little bit about the WSOP School of Poker. So, are you going to be actually doing any of the seminars this summer?
No, there's nothing that is going to keep me away from the poker tables.
Okay.
I mean, during the summer, I pride myself a little bit on being perhaps one of the hardest working poker players. So, and I can't take time away from that to do anything other than play.
You have a pretty good roster that you've put up, put together for this WSOP school. Guys like Madsen, Randy Owell, Baker, Ryan LaPlante recently joined the team. And it looks like you guys have about two seminars pretty much every single week all through the WSOP. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe what we can expect from the school? Do you have any any like secret announcements of like a new roster member or something that maybe you could kind of, we won't tell anybody?
Yeah, as of right now, I don't think there's any like secret coaches in the works. I mean, there's some people that basically just started coaching and have barely done any seminars yet. That are like, Randy O'Hell and other guys like that, like some of the people that you just named. So, just kind of getting them to maybe do more seminars is a good place to start. I think a lot of those guys they're all very good players, and people would have a lot to learn from any of them. And I think the thing that I really want to try out this summer is just having there be like a more regular thing. So just, maybe a couple times a week, people can go sign up, either do a class like that day or the next day, and just have something more regularly available throughout the summer as like, half day or daily seminars, and try to just make it a thing that's just happening kind of like all summer, rather than just like kind of have there be a booth and, maybe like 2 or 3 planned events during the summer. Maybe we still have those bigger planned events, but then we have smaller events that, realistically speaking, a lot of them, might not get more than 10 people in a day, just because we're running a couple of them and it's more on a, fly by the seat of your pants basis.
Ace just texted me also mentioning Jesse Sylvia, which is actually a really cool addition to the roster. I mean, I think it's a great project to be involved with. I'm really happy to be part of the roster just because it feels like there's so few there's so few examples in in something so like golf or baseball. I mean, actually being able to get personal one-on-one attention from the game's top players. That's really what you're offering people for a pretty low price. I mean, basically for the price of maybe 4 piano lessons from the girl across the street. Is basically what you're offering it for. I think it's really amazing, and I definitely think it's going to be a good opportunity for everybody. We're actually going to be giving away a seat to my seminar, which is going to be the big colossal, the Colossus seminar. Where you're not planning on playing the Colossus? I'd guess, huh?
No. Yeah. No, I probably not doing that one.
For everybody else, that's going to be one of the premier events with 20,000 hopefuls. I don't blame you for not slumming it that weekend, but. I just want to say thank you, Brian, very much for coming on the show. Thank you very much for starting WSOP School of Poker. And there we go. Do you have any maybe Colossus tips for getting through a 25,000 person field?
there's really no tip for that. I mean, it's like, here's the thing is that, you just have to realize there's 25,000 people. So, you're going to have to play probably a little bit longer and get a little bit luckier than your normal tournament. But, the flip side is, it's not like there's something like really special and different that you should be doing. It's just called like one hand at a time. Play good poker and just know that you're in it for the long haul. Don't get crazy expectations. Obviously, with a 25,000, 50, however many people play, like some ridiculous number, it's crazy. It's like you turn 1,000 into 2 million or whatever it is, like for first and like when you have that many people playing one poker tournament. But the flip side to that is that it's going to be even harder to do it. Yeah. Like we were talking about this earlier, but it's like I have all these great results, and yeah, these aren't like 50,000 person tournaments. I'm like not going, oh yeah, 1, 4, 2, 10, like these aren't. So you're in a tournament like that, just don't put the cart before the horse. Don't get too crazy with your expectations and pressure on yourself. And, hopefully just play good one hand at a time. And hopefully by the end, you'll be in a good spot. And yeah, that's pretty much all you can do in that. There's no special trick.
Yeah.
Or if there is, I don't know, because I haven't won any 50,000 person tournaments. So, yeah, but no, I mean, about the WSOP School of Poker thing. I mean, yeah, I agree with you, which is why I've, gotten involved. I think it's a great opportunity for people to get lessons from very good players, and then like a one-on-one environment, talk, ask questions. You can always go and, find out answers to, being a seminar coach, I always answer people's a lot of people have their own questions, and, even if it doesn't necessarily fit in a certain time, like the coach is there on break, or like when you take a break and you're eating, and you can talk about some other thing you wanted to talk about. I mean, it's like a pretty cool little opportunity and experience that like ultimately doesn't cost that much money, especially, I mean, it would be a little different. And this is why sometimes I think it can be tough if it's like during an off time and, you have to fly to Vegas to like make it happen. But, if you're already there for the World Series of Poker, and, it's just like, oh, go to this, Dutch's seminar for like 4 hours or whatever, and you get to listen to you or any of the other coaches on the roster talk poker. You'll get to maybe ask some questions about what they're saying, some other specific questions you have on your own. That's a good opportunity that it doesn't cost that much. So, hopefully this summer, the School of Poker will do well, and we'll have a bunch of classes, and people can kind of come at their own schedule and do it, rather than always just having to conform to like one every like 2 weeks too. That's kind of like what I'm hoping for this summer. But I personally will not be doing any of that, because I work myself like a madman during the World Series.
Yeah.
So I'm just like every day, like tournaments, cash, this, like never stop. So
I definitely feel like when I look back at the improvements I've made in my game over my career, a lot of those improvements have come from being able to bounce ideas off of other top players. And one of the things I feel like, I can't say I've personally ever paid for coaching. I don't know if you have in your career ever actually paid another pro to actually, help you on your game. Maybe, Elliott Rowe kind of counts, but it's not really the same thing. But I do feel like a lot of people out there don't have that kind of peer group that, maybe you have, or maybe I have, where, we're hanging out with, bracelet winners and WPT winners and, cash game crushers, who are actually willing to open up to us about, the finer points of the game. So I definitely feel like it's something very valuable, and I'm really looking forward to, continuing to be part of it. Brian, thank you so much for being on the show. I definitely, speak for everybody here when I wish you the best of luck this summer. I know that I'm, we're all rooting for you to just keep on crushing those, those bracelet events, keep on crushing those high rollers. I have very little doubt that, 10 years from now, we're going to be looking at the Hendon Mob. You'll probably be up there to, the first poker player to, have made 9 figures in poker. I could see it. Really appreciate you being here, guys. We're going to be, and also, tell your wife thanks for letting us keep you a little bit later than we had planned, and sorry for maybe the hunger.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
Yeah.
It's all good. I had a good time on the podcast. It was fun. Once we started talking about things, it just time went right by. I don't even just realizing now that it's actually 8:14. So yeah, but no, it was fun. Thank you, Dutch, for having me on.
Yeah, thanks, Brian, and I really appreciate it. And I'm going to go ahead and end the call and kind of wrap things up. So,
all right, sure.
Thanks a lot.
Yep. Have a good night.
Okay, guys. So that was Brian Rast, 3-time WSOP bracelet winner, ARIA High Roller Crusher, all around just end boss. It was really cool having him on. We are going to shut down for a second, and when we come back, we'll be putting the delay on and getting on with the WSOP grind. We're also going to be giving away that seat to my Colossus seminar, which is happening on June 1st. So everybody who's here, stick around for just a couple of minutes, because we could actually probably do that right now. Do you think that you want to just give it away right now?
Well, we're going to put it on YouTube. So
when we come back. So when we come back, we're going to have the delay on. We're going to switch back to non-subscriber chat, so anyone can chime in. And I'm going to have details on how you can win that seat for free. It's a $250 value. Also, keep in mind that if you want to buy entry into that seminar, use the discount code TWITCH, TWITCH. It's not case sensitive, for $50 off. That's a limited time offer. So if you think that you might want to make that seminar, I would encourage you to go ahead and pick it up right now, because it's going to fill up, and you're not going to have this $50 off for too much longer. Okay, guys, so we're going to be back 5 minutes or so to get the delay going, and then we're going to give away a seat. Thank you guys so much for being here. We'll be right back.